when I've studied successful businesses, I've found 6 strategies, and I'll just name them quickly. So just for context. So
Yes.
one is to create a brand new category when you're inventing something the world does not have a new concept of. The second is to win an emerging category. We talked about that already with OpenAI and Anthropic and Meta and others being in that race.
Welcome to the Long-Term Strategy Conference 2025 with my guest, John Rougeux. So let's pretend or imagine for a moment that you're familiar with 2 big concepts: game-changing strategic planning and category design. You believe they both offer amazing potential, but you realize they come from different places invented by very different experts. At the same time, you have a dream of bringing the 2 disciplines together so that your company or client could take advantage of both, so that you could take advantage of how well they could work together. This would be amazing. Game-changing and category design. But how can it be done? Conventional wisdom states that if you aren't going to create the next iPhone, then don't even try to bring the 2 together. But can any strategy benefit from combining these schools of thought in a practical way? I'm Francis Wade, your conference host, and here today to tackle this thorny problem is John Rougeux. John, welcome to the conference.
Hey, Francis. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. This is indeed a very difficult topic, and let's do some serious justice to it. See what we can fix and provide. This is like world hunger, the level of that for strategy, in my mind.
Okay.
So, folks, John Rougeux is the founder of Flag and Frontier. It's a consulting firm that helps founders, CMOs, and CEOs develop and execute strategies to claim new market territory. His category design experience ranges from public companies, tech startups, and global nonprofits, grounded on nearly 20 years of lessons learned as a marketing leader. He's based in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And as you know, we start off our conversations or problem-solving sessions here at the conference with a story. So Christine is a new CEO, recently hired to lead a successful soap company. She spent most of her career in marketing in a range of chief marketing officer roles. She's been a CMO several times. She was promised before joining the company that the board and the executive team wanted to shake up their offerings as a leader in their B2B industry. However, there's always a however. 6 months after joining, she realizes that the company has never really had strong marketing leadership in the C-suite. Instead, they've done well by simply advertising the same product since inception, over and over again. It's all about advertising. She recently studied their sales figures, and it's clear that their sales are starting to plateau. And in her mind, this set off some alarm bells. Why? Well, in one of her previous roles at the household goods company, the executives were actually blindsided by the creation of a new offering by competitors. This turned out to be a disaster. Why? Well, the company was subsequently acquired for peanuts, and they lost 90% of her staff, and she was let go as well. So when she sits alone at night and it gets all quiet, she's really fretting because it could be happening again. Fortunately, since that debacle with that household goods company, she's been exposed to the ideas of category strategy in the past year. She's no expert in category strategy, but she wants to be able to bring it into the company, and she has struggled to try to explain what it is and why it's important to particularly her board, her new bosses. With a strategy retreat only a few months away, expectations are high that the new CEO is going to come and do some magic. But given the resistance she's experienced to the idea of category strategy, category design, How should she proceed? So it's a very, very, very difficult challenge that she has in front of her. And John, let me ask you: is this a problem that you see in your work?
Well, poor Christine, huh? We're we've got some sympathy for her because, I mean, where haven't we seen this problem, Francis? I mean, you don't have to look very hard around you to understand that product categories have life cycles, markets mature, they eventually decline, some faster, some slower than others, but nothing is static. So every business is either, well, if they're doing things right, they're either trying to cement and hold on to their leadership position, or they're trying to, um, maybe they're trying to take that leader down, or more likely they're trying to carve out some new territory for themselves. So yeah, it's all around us. It's the way business works.
It sure is, and it might not be competition as it is in the case of in the case of Christine. It could be just a technology. It could be a government regulation. It could be a tariff. It could be climate change.
Mm-hmm.
It could be any host of disruptive factors that do something to the current category that you're in. That if you're not in the game of category strategy, and you assume that, oh, people will always need soap, you will end up always producing the same kind of soap
Mm-hmm.
until maybe it's too late. And we were before the call, we were talking about some examples of some too lates. You want to share a couple of them with our listeners to get an idea that this is very real.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll share one that I was just hearing about. Well, yesterday I was
Yeah.
listening to a podcast, and they were talking about Meta's foray into AI. And I can remember back when Facebook was such a daily part of everyday life. I had a difficult time thinking of when it wouldn't be the case, when it would start to fade away. But now, as you know, like none of my kids use Facebook. They're not even interested. They do use Instagram. Okay, so they're using one of their products. Um, but um, social media is evolving, and what
Mm-hmm.
we want out of social media is changing. We're starting to recognize some of the harms of social media as well, and so it doesn't take a great deal of insight to recognize that if you're one of the companies leading social media, like Meta is, you have to think about what's next. You can't assume that that behavior, that type of digital product will exist and have the same level of usership, um, you know, into the long term future. So Zuckerberg's been thinking about, okay, well, how do we participate in uh, AI in general, and specifically, can we put ourselves in a position to win AGI or super intelligence? And what was interesting in this particular example is they're not coming from AGI, or they're not coming into AI from a native perspective. They're coming at it from a social media company who's trying to figure out AI. And very quickly, they found themselves behind in the race. Obviously, behind OpenAI, but you could argue they're behind some of the other frontier labs as well, with Anthropic and Gemini, and even
Mm-hmm.
I would say Microsoft. One of their in one of their recent models, they had to tune it just to so it would fare well in some standards test, and it turned out to be kind of a bad look for them because the model wasn't the same when they released to the public. It was a model that they tuned just to fare well in this test. Anyway, long story short, they had made a very expensive acquisition recently. They acquired a company for 14 or 15 billion, or they acquired a stake in a company for 14 or 15 billion. And they're having to pull every lever they can because they're already so far behind. Um, and who knows if they'll be able to succeed, or I have my own doubts as to whether they'll be able to surpass the leaders and come out ahead. But even whether they have a viable AI strategy or not is yet to be determined.
Yeah, so they were the category giants in social media, and you know, regardless of what you think about the story of how it came about, how Mark Zuckerberg innovated the ideas that went into Facebook, the fact is that they became the category leader.
Right.
And it sounds as if you're saying you're kind of wondering, do they know what they did in a way that allows them to do it again in an area in which they're not expert, and which there are
Mhm.
several other people, many other people who are already experts and are already quite far ahead.
Mhm.
It's a tough strategic question for a meta, no?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a great way of putting it. I think you said, do they say it back to me again? Because you said, do they know
What they did
what
the
they
first
did in a
time.
way that they could do it again?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I saw. Like many other people, I saw the movie, but I've read accounts. How Zuckerberg he went from he built capacity or an understanding of social networks over
Mhm.
time. It took him years.
Mhm.
It didn't happen overnight. It took him years of innovating the software to the point where he could create a Facebook. But he saw he had insights along the way that nobody else had. So he had an advantage because he
Mhm.
started before everybody else did, and he took risks and he's a
Mhm.
smart guy, other things. But question is, that secret formula, could that be reproduced in a new way for a mature company, a Facebook, as the company that exists now,
Mhm.
in a worse, in an industry that's already crowded like AI?
Yeah.
That's what do you think? Just is this an impossible dream, or do you think that if he called you tomorrow and said,
Mhm.
"John, I need some category strategy badly,"
Yeah.
what do you
Well,
think?
yeah, that's presuming I would even be interested in working with Meta. So that's, yeah, and I'm
That's a
not sure about
different
that.
story.
But yeah, so I think it raises the question. What I'm curious about, Francis, is
Mm-hmm.
well, what is Meta's story? What's the story they tell themselves about AI? And it's not clear to me.
Mm-hmm.
I have a better sense, and we'll come back to them in a second, but I
Mm-hmm.
have a fairly good sense of what OpenAI's story is. Now, it
Mm-hmm.
may not be, let's assume it's maybe not even realistic, or maybe it might be a little far fetched.
Mm-hmm.
When you hear what Sam Altman has for the future, it's a very grand vision about super intelligence and AGI. Fine.
Mm-hmm.
What matters is, like, there's some clarity around where they're headed,
Mm-hmm.
and that what that clarity does is really interesting. Is it gives them a swim lane, what they're trying to achieve, and it helps them attract the best talent along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it's also helping them attract the best investors and the best terms for that investment. So they have this compounding advantage that they've already been leaning on for a few cycles now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what's Meta's story? The best I
Mm-hmm.
can understand is they want to build AI chatbots for the users as
Mm-hmm.
a companion type of product.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fine. I, we can put whether we think that product is good or bad to the side, but is that a product that is that a product that people need? Is that a product that
Mm-hmm.
solves a problem, or is it a
Mm-hmm.
problem that Meta thinks they can make money on?
Uh,
Now, they don't have to be mutually exclusive, but if
mm-hmm.
you don't have both, then you risk kind of grasping at straws for things that can alleviate revenue problems, but may not create lasting business value.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't seen that. It's not clear to me um, how those two play together for Meta. And you can
Right.
kind of see this, like they're paying. Okay, you know how much they're paying engineers now?
A
100
meta.
million. 100 million. Not the company. Up to 100. The last person they hired, or well, not the last, but someone they hired recently, 75 million. And
Like for AI, he's an AI. I
yeah,
take it he's an AI engineer
I'm
at the
not sure
time,
that the title was someone
but he
that
has
came on board as part of the hire. They acquired the company for 14 or 15 billion, a 49% stake in the company, and they're hiring.
wow.
So when you pay that much, what does that say? I don't
You
know. Maybe you're a
you
little
really
desperate.
wonder. Yeah, you really wonder, but this is why we have a conference like this, because people who or attendees, people who folks, as you're listening, you're imagining yourself either you're the chief strategy officer of Meta, and you're hearing all these things happening around you, and you're wondering, huh, is this the right strategy? Is this from a category strategy point of view? are these good decisions that are being made? Or if you're a consultant, and you get called by a meta and they say, oh yeah, we're gonna do this and that, and you say, and you apply category strategy to it as a
Mm-hmm.
filter.
Mm-hmm.
And as you apply your filter the way John is doing, you're like, I'm hearing some stuff that doesn't seem to jive. And as someone who wants a company to have a game-changing strategy at the end of the day, that's successful, something that produces a monumental transformative impact, as they share their category concepts or category plans, some of it may fall flat as you hear it.
Mm-hmm.
And some of it says, have you guys thought of the discipline of category strategy and category design and using that to shape your thinking? And they might say, oh, we don't need that stuff. We just need to, move fast and break things or something like that. We
Yeah.
don't need that kind of stuff. We don't need that thinking. And it puts us in a very tricky spot because we want them to do what you're doing, which is to step back and say, okay, there's a lot of money here. There's a lot of technology, a lot of people, a lot of investment already, a lot of public announcements. There's a lot of stuff that's already happened. But if you were to say, Mark, why don't you step back with me and together we'll look at this through a different lens? That's a tough thing to ask of
Mm-hmm.
Mark Zuckerberg or just the CEO of a client that we work with. It's not easy to introduce a new way of thinking, especially when there's already something. There's usually some thinking going on already. In the
Mm-hmm.
case of Christine, the thinking is, oh, we'll just keep, selling soap that we've always sold it. We'll tweak the advertising. We'll
Mm-hmm.
hire a
Mm-hmm.
spokesperson. We'll do all of this advertising stuff. But along comes some consultant or along comes Christine and starts to talk about some fundamental rethinking of a category.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, what? She's questioning whether we should be selling soap or not. Are you crazy? And the board is like, I imagine their look on their faces when she
Mm-hmm.
says, are we in the right category? And should we be changing the way we work in this category, getting into another one? And they look at her like, did we just hire her? Did we pay money for this? They're thinking something is very wrong. So it's a wicked challenge for us as strategists, whether we're in
Mm-hmm.
a company or advising a company. Um, tell me if you agree. I just picked that up from the way you language the problem
Yeah.
of
I think what you're
advising meta.
I think what you're getting at is like you have to start with the right questions.
Mm,
And so if we want to bring things back to Christine, you know, one option could be, of course, yeah, stop selling soap, invent something else.
mm-hmm,
Another option could be maybe reinvent what soap means to people. The soap itself is kind of a commodity, right? I mean, we don't have a problem getting clean. Anything you buy at the store is going to get you clean, right? So,
we
you know,
like to think.
like, okay, I'm not an expert in CPG, okay, but like one brand that came to mind since you and I started this conversation was Dove. Um,
Dove. The
right.
white. That's a for those of you outside the US, it's a white soap with it's curved a little bit.
Yeah.
Has a dove on the top.
The bar soap is like that. Yeah. Then they have
It
other,
floats.
it
That's
floats.
all I
Okay.
remember.
Oh, all right.
Floats.
Um, so I'm not an expert in CPG, so I'm probably going to get some of these details wrong, but I think the broad strokes are what matter. So some time ago, Dove changed the way that they marketed themselves, and they tried to redefine beauty standards in the way that they advertise their soap. So traditionally, I think in beauty products in general, you would have supermodel, someone who meets like very high standards of of beauty,
Mm-hmm.
makeup, soap, shampoo, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Dove, I can't remember the messaging or the tagline they used, but they had like real people, so to speak. So they didn't have the perfect supermodel body type, or uh, there was a variety of skin color and body composition, and maybe there's some blemishes and flaws and things. Real people like you and me. And
Mm-hmm.
the idea was like, well, if I'm going to try to back into what I think their idea was, it was something like, soap we're soap for everyday people. We're soap. We're a brand that celebrates, beauty in all of its forms. So it was a different point of view about soap and what they stand for as a brand. Now I don't know how successful that was. I haven't really looked at their numbers, but I know that got a lot of attention, and that was one approach that they took, which
Mm-hmm.
we can at least give them credit for not doing what they did in the past. I'm assuming they looked at how cultural values had changed within the U.S. and thought, well, maybe there's an opportunity for us to tap into that and lean into that and redefine who we are without having to redefine our product. So,
Sometimes
anyway,
that's
what do you think
possible.
about that?
You can take the same product and have it serve a different purpose in a brand new category. Sometimes that's possible,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Like soap to remove dirt. I That's what I use my soap for. I use my soap. That's not be too much information. But after I work out, I bathe. I use
Yeah.
the soap.
Yeah.
Soap is for that purpose.
Hmm.
I don't use my soap for beauty.
Right.
You can tell.
Yeah.
I mean, I should be using it,
Right.
but it's not. I use it for one category and not the other. And if you were to
Uh-huh.
try to sell me soap as a beauty solution, I'd walk right on by, because that's not the category that I buy soap. I don't buy soap in
Yeah.
that category. So
Yeah.
it would take something to change those categories, even if you didn't change the product.
Hmm. Yeah. That's a great.
That's an interesting example.
Right. Well, it's a great point because we can talk about. I have a piece called the 6 category strategies, which we can talk about if you like, but one of them is to reinvent as a kind of a stagnant category. So you're thinking about something that's existed for a while in a new way.
Hmm.
And another one is to niche down, which I'll give credit to the Play Bigger crew and Christopher Lockhead for coining that thinking. So they kind of did both, right? They niched down. They're not selling soap to Francis. They're selling soap to somebody who cares about beauty and maybe thinking differently about beauty standards. It's very different from the soap that you might put in your garage where you've been working on your car and you've got this like oil and grit, and that soap is very gritty, right? It's very like um, uh, basic or corrosive, or not
Right.
corrosive. Hopefully not corrosive, but I'm not sure of it, where the pH falls. But it gets all these really tough chemicals off your hand. You don't want to use that on your face if you're trying to uh,
Maybe
have a
mine, but yeah.
yeah. Right. So that's another. That's niching down within
Exfoliant.
soap, right?
Yeah, those are good principles. No, the thing is, folks, as you're listening, you probably won't become a strategy category strategy expert the way John is. So we won't get to his level of sophistication, but we've probably all been in planning retreats or planning projects where we hear some bad category business going on. Bad in the sense that it's like, hold on a minute, this that doesn't sound, for all the reasons that we've talked about so far. There's something that is going on that's not gonna work. And we don't really know what to say or what to do or how to intervene effectively in the moment. And we probably imagine that if we just said the right thing, John, then Kodak could become Fujifilm. BlackBerry could become iPhone.
Mm.
We're there in the moment when they're making some god awful decisions, and we can see it kind of coming. If we just say, well, guys, the right combination of words, we could have them see that there's a category lens to apply to this, and there's a category strategy that is now needed, and we
Mm.
just don't know how to move the ball, how to move the needle, how to open their minds so
Mm.
that they can say, "Oh my God, look, he's right." And you hear the heavens and the birds and the angels start to, because we've just, in those moments as consultants, we've just said the right thing, and the right thing said at the right time has made all the difference in the world. We yearn for that. And in category design, in category strategy, so folks, we're not. I'm not there. I don't. Most of us aren't there yet, but we want to get there. So John had an epiphany when he read a book that took him from where he started off as a. Well, John, why don't you share the story, because it may give us a sense of a journey that we as strategists need to go on ourselves, so that we develop some fluency in
Mhm.
this particular area.
Yeah. Um, I will just preface this by saying my view of a good consultant is not someone who has the right answers, but someone who can ask better questions. So I try to have a perspective, but really, I think our job is to um, challenge teams in a healthy way to get them to think differently. It's not our job. We can have answers, but it's not our job to have them. It's to help the team discover them for themselves, so they have that sense of ownership. Um, anyway,
And
that that
before you tell the story, just to
yeah.
jump in, so what kills me is, when I have the right question in my head,
Mhm.
and what comes out of my mouth, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't do what I thought it was gonna do. And in my head, I have all the questions that would, move the needle, and then when it comes out, it just doesn't. It goes. I get a reaction, or I say it in a way that, and then I wasn't skillful, or and then it doesn't. So that's like, consultants fears, in particular, or actually managers fears, when you kind of see something, and
Mhm.
but then you don't have the skill to. But anyway, so you've developed this skill over time, and it started with your reading. So tell us before, what it was like before you read the book you discovered, and then what happened since, as you made your journey.
Yeah. Okay. So there was a time relatively early in my career when I was working at some early stage startups, and I found myself running marketing, and everything I had been exposed to in terms of business and marketing was fairly traditional and fairly tactical in nature. So what that meant for me was I had some early success acquiring customers through paid acquisition, and at that point in time, it happened to be on Facebook. And I would meet with my creative director, and we would go through different ideas for creative and for copy and for landing pages, and we started to see some pretty decent numbers. It costs us X dollars to acquire a customer or to acquire a lead. Those converted at a pretty reliable rate, and those very healthy. But my thinking was very naive, Francis, because I thought that all I really needed to do was continue to split test our ad creative or landing pages. And as long as I could keep finding new ways to iterate on those, I could scale the business indefinitely. Well, I realized the hard way that that isn't true. There's limits on how well direct response advertising can work, and
Mm-hmm.
um, I just didn't realize that at the time. So I set out to figure out what I was doing wrong or what I was missing. And I had a sense that the idea wasn't better tactics. So I didn't want some digital marketing book that someone had written recently. I didn't think that would be helpful to me. I needed to go back to more first principles.
Mm-hmm.
So I intentionally looked for old school marketing and business books.
Mm-hmm.
And I came across one written by Al Reese and Jack Trout, 21 Immutable Laws of Marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the light bulb went off. The first law in the book is to be number one in whatever category you're participating in. And the number two rule is related. It's if you can't be number one, then set up a new category where you can be first.
Mm-hmm.
And when I thought about that, I thought, wow, this is a much deeper way of thinking about business, because you're not worrying about the tactics. You're really thinking about how can I put myself in a place where the dynamics of my market work in my favor, where I have the best chance of winning.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to use a sports analogy, like you know, Michael Jordan was number one in basketball, right? What happened when he played baseball and golf?
Uh,
He wasn't even number. He wasn't number two. He was like number 37 or number
37,
137. Yeah,
2007.
right, right. He wasn't.
He
He
wasn't
wasn't
anywhere near.
right. And as athletic as he was, the chances of him ever catching up to somebody who had spent decades compounding their skills in baseball or golf,
Mm-hmm.
he could never have caught up to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially not. I can't remember how old he was, but
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah. So anyway, that book just changed the way I thought about business and marketing, and it led me on a whole different path in my own career.
Mm. It was like the beginning. So what kinds of places did that take you? I know you're a strategy consultant now, so you left the world of nine to
Mhm.
five paychecks to go out on
Mhm.
your own to be a category consultant,
Mhm.
category consultant in category strategy, right?
Right.
Am I
Yeah.
understanding?
Yeah. So for the next few chapters, I continue to work as a VP of marketing for a few
Mm-hmm.
different companies. And the immediate change was I started to think about how I could apply these principles within my own work, within the companies I was where I was employed. Um, I did a lot of things the wrong way. I didn't know what
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know,
Mm-hmm.
and the as helpful as a book like 21 Immutable Laws of Marketing is, and as helpful as Play Bigger is, and they are not um, playbooks. They are frameworks to think about
Mm-hmm.
business and to think about marketing. But putting those ideas to practice in the real world and meeting like internal resistance and inertia from the past, meeting those things firsthand, it's a very different story. So,
Mm-hmm.
long story short, I figured out some things. I did a lot of things wrong, made a lot of mistakes, but I continued to improve. And I also realized the limitation of how difficult some of that work is when you're inside the company.
Mm-hmm.
When you're inside the company, you have to worry about what your boss thinks of your work.
Mm-hmm.
You have to worry about um, if I say something uncomfortable, you know, what's it going to be like 3 hours later when I'm having lunch with that person or when I'm in another meeting. Um,
Hmm.
you even have to try to separate yourself from like there might be good advice for the company that might be bad for your role or might make your role more difficult. And
Or
so
go
and
or
it's
go
hard
away.
or go away, right? So you have to be able to separate those things, and it's difficult
Mm-hmm.
to do that. In a more pragmatic way, whatever role you have in a company, you are you are defined by that role. So if you're CMO, you're the marketing person. If you're head of product, you're a product person. So everything that you do, everything that you say internally, it's coming from that lane,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, which puts like a what would you say, a slant or a bias on the way people perceive um, your view of things. And when we talk about category strategy and category design, it really affects it's at the business level that we're talking about. And so the marketing person, the product person, those roles are never going to like affect the core strategy of the business directly. And even if you're the CEO, which is not a job I have an interest in having myself, like the founders and CEOs I've met with, they don't claim to have all the answers. They have difficulty seeing the business objectively because they're in it every day. And even they've told me directly, even when they feel like they do have some conviction, there's some hesitation to force that on the team. They don't
Mm-hmm.
want to use up all their political capital, and they want to have the team feel like it's their
It's
strategy,
their
not something that's
strategy.
like imposed. Um, so all this is to say that I started doing some consulting on the side, and I realized that it played more to my strengths because I was able to be more objective and dispassionate about the business and use some even naivety about how things have been working to my advantage because I could ask dumb questions and not get in trouble for them and challenge people without having it being awkward. And I even had one client tell me they wanted me to be the bad guy, so to speak, um, in their strategy sessions because like I needed to ask the hard questions and challenge their thinking. And as you probably know, and people listening know, it's very difficult to do that consistently and effectively when you are inside the business.
So is there uh 10 minutes left? Is there a framework that you could leave with us? I just guessing that we're not we haven't studied your approach.
Mhm.
We haven't read your book yet. We haven't read all your content on LinkedIn. We haven't been to your website to do all of the. We haven't sent Chat GPT to go figure out what's John Rougeux's way of doing category strategy. We haven't done all of that yet. Um, We will. Okay, but maybe you could give us a sense of maybe a formula or a way, a framework, or a prism for us to walk away with, and then use in our work as we go forward. Is there something that you could leave with us? That
Sure.
nature.
Yeah. Well, let me first give just some credit to people who've taught me how to do what I do, and I've continued to build on that. So I spent a year with Category Design Advisors. That's a very pure play category design uh, advisory group consultancy. So I have to give some credit to them. I have a lot of respect for Andy Raskin and his um, approach to strategic narrative. He really kind of brought that to the forefront in terms of how important the story is
The
into
story.
getting people aligned around a strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for as long as humans have been around, we've used stories to understand the world, not decks full of charts and graphs. So get a lot of credit for him. And then of course the group that wrote Play Bigger and Christopher Lockhead in particular has been a great mentor. So the way that I approach things is I kind of, again, like I've learned things from all these folks, but what I think about first before I go into any client engagement is I want to think about what category strategy is the most appropriate for that business at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now, just to kind of give you like a high level overview of what that means,
Mm-hmm.
when I've studied successful businesses, I've found 6 strategies, and I'll just name them quickly. So, just for context, so
Yes.
one is to create a brand new category when you're inventing something the world does not have a new concept of. The second is to win an emerging category. We talked about that already with OpenAI and Anthropic and Meta and others being in that race. We Number 3 is to own a category niche. We mentioned that with Dove as one particular example. Number 4 is to grow your category leadership. So if you're the leader, like you don't continue to lead by default, at least not forever. You have to be intentional about that. So that's our fourth strategy is how do we keep moving that category forward and do so in our favor. Number 5 is to consolidate categories. So many companies begin as a point solution, and then they found that there's more value that can be had from consolidating solutions together. So you see this a lot in financial services. You see this a lot in SaaS, where people want platforms instead of point tools. And then number 6 is to reimagine a stagnant category. And I like to use Zoom as an example of that. Video conferencing had been around for a long time.
Right.
Nobody liked it.
Skype.
It was terrible. It
Skype.
was Skype,
Pain
WebEx,
in the
Citrix,
pain in the
whatever.
neck.
Yeah. And Zoom. So Zoom didn't invent video conferencing, but they had a new take on it and they revitalized it into something that was accessible and easy to use. And they also happened to get lucky where they did that just before the pandemic and it took off.
COVID.
But anyway, so what we focus on first is, what does the world around us look like? What strategic options are even available to us,
Mm-hmm.
given the dynamics of the external world and what we maybe what we've built or what capabilities we have internally, or maybe what point of view that we have internally. Doesn't have to be technology; it can be. Okay, so when we go through that, then we can have a sense of what our job to be done is with our category strategy. What are we really trying to achieve? And then we go through a process of capturing um, that viewpoint in a strategic narrative or a point of view, if you want to use that term.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're doing that, we're aligning the executive team on what this strategy is.
Mm-hmm.
We're constructing it together, and we're evaluating every word, every phrase, every step in the logic
Mm-hmm.
to really crystallize our own thinking about where we're headed.
Mm-hmm.
And we're using that then to align the team and to use that as the foundation is for our external messaging. But when you get everybody aligned and you have the story, you know what your aim is. And having an aim is very powerful and it helps you avoid expensive mistakes of going down on set strategy side quests that don't really help you in the long term.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the second piece. And then the third is every client that I've worked with on those core principles, we've come together in a longer term partnership, and I'm helping them execute that strategy. Not doing all the work for them, but I'm continuing to help them maintain direction, maintain momentum, help ensure that they're working on the right things at the right time. So I have a quarterly process that I fold into their own quarterly strategy sessions, where we make sure that there's several different aspects of category strategy, and we make sure that we've identified what things are on track, what things are off track, and what the focus needs to be for the upcoming quarter to ensure that that category strategy comes out successful.
Right. For the folks as you're listening, you're probably saying, so I do a lot of those things in general, but I don't have category strategy as one of my quivers.
Mm-hmm.
So I probably have other things that I focus on, probably the areas in which you're already strong. If you're an attendee to this conference, chances are you're strong in many areas. And then what I hear John telling us is that with a strength in category design and category strategy, you can add this other kind of lens that leads a team to make better decisions than if you didn't have it. And before I even knew what category design or strategy meant, I look back, or once I found out what it was, I look back at prior projects and realized that I had opportunities to do similar things that John mentioned, and I didn't know I missed them. In a way, I blew them in a bit. I didn't offer that kind of dramatic thinking or that kind of nuanced thinking to the client. And I left them with just, their business, their regular thinking, their category less thinking.
Uh-huh.
And I did a disservice. Really. I didn't do what I could have done. So for sure, I'm going to be dissecting John's 6 points and the approach. I'm going to go back over this video and I'm going to capture it. And so I'm going to use ChatGPT to go check you out and everything.
Okay.
Check out everything you've ever written, figure it out. Because that's the way of the world right now. You don't have a book, do you?
No, I don't have one at the moment, but
Okay.
it's
Otherwise,
something that I'm thinking about and working towards.
well, let me know as soon as you get the book.
Okay.
I'll stick my LLM on it, dissect the hell out of it, and find the parts that I need to know about. But we need to be about this area of expertise, folks. Like it's a critical part of what we do. And if we're serious about producing game-changing strategy, there is no way we can consistently do that without having a working knowledge. And I mentioned the word fluency, being fluent in these ideas and being able to represent them as a series of steps in a systematic way. So even if we don't ever lead a category design effort, because we may not, as generalists, we may not ever be on a category design project. But if we don't bring it up in a strategy retreat, what the heck? What are we leaving on the table in terms of opportunities for that company?
Can I offer a little bit of a reframe on what you just said?
Yeah.
So the reason you were asking me before the call why I use category strategy, and I use that alongside category design and category creation. If you were to treat category design as a project, that implies it's an effort over a limited of time with a beginning and an end. So the reason I use category strategy is because I want to be able to ask the question, what is your category strategy? And I truly believe that every business that cares about growing or at least thriving needs to understand what their category strategy is. It doesn't mean that they are always having to invent a new category, but it could. But it does mean they have to be conscious about how they're setting themselves up to win the game that they're playing.
Right.
And are they playing the right game?
Right.
So if you don't understand the concept of whether I have a category strategy or not, then you don't have the right lens to think about your long-term prospects, right? Right, and you're subjecting yourself to forces of the market, external forces. And you have to ask yourself if that's a situation that you want to participate in, or would you rather be more proactive about that?
Yeah. Yeah. And, the answer for us in this conference anyway is that we're up to game changing strategy. And if it ain't game changing, it ain't strategy. So we want to be the ones called in when the stakes are high, not when, oh yeah, we just want to produce, kind of update a few things on a thing that we have. And no, we want to be around when there's a lot of clarity and a lot of conviction and a lot of opportunity. All right, John. So we're at the end of our time. I can't believe it. But how can folks get learn more about the work that you're doing?
So I have a newsletter called the Narrative Field Guide on Substack. So
I'm subscribed.
check that out. Okay, you are a subscriber. That's how you responded to me.
That's why I got you.
Right. You can find me on LinkedIn, or if you just want to send me a note directly, email is best. It's john@flagandfrontier.com.
Great. And folks, don't miss an opportunity to reach out, and also drop a comment just below this here at Strat Cinema. Let folks know what you got from the conversation or the discussion that we just had with John. And John, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you coming on short notice from Colorado. And everyone, see you in the next video.
Thanks for having me, Francis. Take care.
All right.